Well, you four better get moving if you don't want me to catch you. As the foals ran, Scootaloo was falling far behind her friends who were too busy running to notice the orange Pegasus slowing down to catch her breath. Scootaloo huffed and wheezed, seeing her friends almost vanishing into forest. Scootaloo wiped the sweat from her forehead, her werewolf costume was steaming inside. She let out an annoyed exhale then pulled off her wolf head. Scootaloo could see her friends running back towards her, she smiled but then out of nowhere, Princess Luna dashed out of sky, scooping up a screaming Scootaloo. The three let out a scream of surprise as they saw the Night Princess flying off with their friend. Luna smirked playfully as she flew off with Scootaloo, finding a clearing far enough away from the initial group and setting her down on the ground. Oof! Scootaloo let out as she looked up, seeing Princess Luna landing beside her. The young Pegasus panicked, backing away from her still laying on her back. Please Princess, don't hurt me, please. She begged, tears dripped from her face as Luna stepped closer and closer to her. Don't fear young Scootaloo, everything will be fine. Her horn glowed, casting a magic aura around Scootaloo, making her shrink to the same size as snips and snails. No! 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 Scootaloo screamed, trying to fly her way out but to no effect for the poor Pegasus as she was levitated towards Princess Luna's open, saliva-coated maw. Scootaloo was then placed gently inside Luna's mouth. She smiled as she pulled the tiny Pegasus into her mouth. Scootaloo tried grabbing a hold of Luna's bottom lip and pulling herself out, but then Luna's red, spongy tongue slipped under her, parting the Pegasus from her lip. Scootaloo slipped backwards on the slippery tongue and began to head right towards Luna's open throat. Luna's maw closed, sealing the filly in darkness. After a brief inhale, she tilted her head and gulped her down. She smiled as she felt the filly being pushed down her throat and into her eagerly awaiting belly. Luna licked her lips, she rubbed her belly, feeling the movements of other ponies she had captured. She then took to the air, in search of the three foals. The other three were searching in fear for the forest's exit, but not finding anything. They were still doing their best to stay close to each other. Pip Squeak started to sniff loudly, he huffed a few sudden times till his eyes were becoming watery. It wasn't long before he started crying again. Apple Bloom swallowed. SSHH. I know it's hard, but we don't want her to find us. Sweetie Belle swallowed hard. Scootaloo would probably yell at us to pull ourselves together. Pip grimaced. He didn't need to hear that. I'm so sorry. Sorry. He sobbed. Apple Bloom forced a smile. It's not your fault, Pip. Warm tears dripped from the colt's eyes, he rubbed them away but to no avail as he continued to sob. I wish I had never made friends with her. He sobbed as quietly as he could bring his voice down. Let's just focus on getting back to town. Apple Bloom swallowed. The young earth pony knew she had to keep her friends together, she had to keep them calm and find a way out of this forest and get help. The sound of heavy flapping echoed the air, making the three jolt suddenly. Sweetie Belle squeaked. In defense, she looked for something she could throw, like a stone or branch. Oh no! Pip whimpered as the sound of heavy flapping started to get even louder. In a panic, Sweetie Belle picked up her projectile, a decently sized rock, and threw it in the direction of the flapping as Luna floated above the foals. She didn't notice the rock heading right for and striking her on the neck. She let a loud grunt as the three continued to flee. Sweetie looked for something else to throw, making the filly stay while her friends were running. She could at least fight the princess back. Sweetie Belle levitated some broken sticks and rocks, then blasted them at the alicorn. Luna shielded herself with her wing as the sticks and rocks bounced off her wing, flopping to the ground. Luna folded her wing then stared the little filly down, her horn glowed a blue light, casting the aura around Sweetie, levitating her in the air. She kicked and screamed, waving her front hooves in the air. Sweetie Belle, please calm down. Luna spoke in a gentle tone. Sweetie Belle was feeling a mixture of pure terror from her current situation and confusion as to why she was trying to calm her. Either way, she didn't want to be gobbled up by Nightmare Moon and began struggling. "Don't worry sweetie, you'll see your friends again." Luna closed her eyes, making her horn glow brighter. Sweetie Belle began to shrink down to the size of all the colts and fillies that had been gobbled up by Nightmare Moon. Sweetie Belle panicked, flailing around, kicking and swatting. Luna stared at the little unicorn, smiling at her. She levitated the unicorn to her muzzle, and then opened her maw wide enough for Sweetie to fit inside. Sweetie Belle was placed in Luna's mouth, then placed gently on her soft tongue. Luna closed her mouth, keeping the little unicorn in darkness. "Please Princess Luna. Please. Let me out." Sweetie Belle pleaded as the aura vanished around her. She crawled on the spongy flesh to the line of shut teeth and tried to part them open. "Please let me out." Sweetie Belle was then lifted up by the massive slimy tongue, coating her in saliva. The tongue curved up, making Sweetie slide to the waiting throat of the alicorn. "Don't worry Sweetie Belle. Everything will be fine, I promise." Luna's voice echoed around the slimy cave. Sweetie let a scream as she slid into Luna's throat. Luna tilted her head and swallowed. The two remaining foals watched in horror as Sweetie Belle was swallowed. Apple Bloom slowly backed up before taking off as fast as she could. Pipsqueak followed behind her, galloping alongside her as they ran. Pip's eyes started to water. Pip sobbed loudly, tears floated in the wind as they ran. The tired foals ran as fast as they could see the town way off in the distance. They were nearing towards the ravine, running across the wooden bridge. "Come on Pip, we can make it!" Apple Bloom shouted. The foals ran faster and faster as much as they could. They were inches away from the bridge. A sudden shadow casts over them, and then Princess Luna dropped from the sky, landing right in front of them, making the foals make a sudden stop, grinding the ground under them. Both Pip and Apple Bloom gasped as the alicorn stood in front of them. "I'm sorry children, the game has ended." Apple Bloom and Pip tried to make a quick run for it, but were stopped by Luna's magical force field. Pip began to sob loudly. The little stallion felt her magic surround him, then an intense sensation of vertigo as the world around him began to grow. He looked around and noticed that Apple Bloom was shrinking with him, a look of fear and worry on her face. Luna paused, seeing the look of her friend and the apple filly both sobbing and screaming. "Pip, Apple Bloom, I want you to understand no harm will come to you." "You're lying, why you monster!" Pipsqueak shouted with tears streaming down his face as he stared into the face of his once hero with red eyes. This struck the heart of the alicorn. She was called monster. Luna looked away in disappointment. She knew she'd taken this game too far and she knew she had to explain. "Pipsqueak, Apple Bloom, everyone I've gobbled tonight is alive and well." Luna frowned when she saw them still sobbing their eyes out. They clearly didn't quite believe her. "Not yet, at least." How can I trust you?" Pip sobbed. "Because I would never bring harm to my subjects, especially children. I would rather die than harm you," Luna said to Pip while Apple Bloom stared into her eyes. The little filly didn't take her stare away from the giant alicorn. She saw a look in her eyes that looked to be of honestly. She couldn't see any hint of a lie. "Pip, she's telling the truth." Pip swallowed a bit, trying to think of what to make of this. He couldn't comprehend eating some pony without bringing harm. "If we wanted to bring harm to you, would we not risk our life to save your friend's life before gobbling her up?" Luna asked the little foals. They had to admit this was a good point. But there was still the fear of the situation. She'd have to show them firsthand that it was safe. "See, can you prove it?" Pipsqueak asked. Luna closed her eyes and nodded her head gently. She looked towards her stomach, keeping Pipsqueak and Apple Bloom flouting in her magic aura. Her horn glowed, then there was a bright flash and a confused Scootaloo with a nightmare night party hat